I want to talk about Crucible. I really want to talk about Crucible real quick. Couple of different reasons why I want to talk about Crucible in general. The league mechanic itself, because I've played quite a lot now, and there's a few things that I feel is really cool with this mechanic, and a few things that are really bad that I'm not happy with at all. I do believe that all of this can be solved with some minor changes. And normally we see new leagues with new cool ideas from GGG, and it takes about a week or two before they reach like a really cool middle ground where most things are as good as they can be. And I'm very confident that that's something we're going to see. However, I do want to talk about the pros and cons or the experiences I've had with Crucible and have a bit of a discussion video about it. So essentially, Crucible League feels on league start, when I started off with the first 24-hour session we did, we encountered a little bit, and as league started with Meixsell with minion builds, I only bothered it if I had a convening or calling or convoking one. And honestly, like, any sort of extra node was fine. This one here, for example, does nothing for minions, whereas I believe I have it here somewhere. Yeah, here I actually do have. So this is one of the ones I used from Act 3, I think, where I got a little bit of extra damage, and I got some extra attacking cast speed here. So this was really nice when I was leveling. But I did realize that there are some modifiers that can brick your item, or brick your build. So if you're playing like a bow build, for example, explosive arrow, and you hit something with fire damage, you've ruined your EE, and you can't use the weapon. But I've also been told that if you bring the item to the Crucible Circle and bring a Scour Orb, and then open up the tree, and then use the Scour onto the tree somehow, then that would work. I haven't really tested it out, so I'm not sure exactly how that mechanic works to respec out of this initial point. But I'm not sure. I feel like that's something that could be solved, or simply they could just make it so that once you level up the weapon so that you can get the first node, you just have to actually put the point in to the first node. That would be the easiest solution to that, personally. However, there's a couple of things with Crucible that needs to be stated. I'm going to talk about the mechanic of the reward first. And the biggest issue with the Crucible, in my opinion, is that it's not that the monsters are not dropping much, because that's another problem, that they're not really dropping any specific rewards, which make it kind of a so-so mechanic outside of a few different approaches to it. The biggest issue, in my opinion, is that you can't get a tree on your unique items unless you do a map. Now, I'm okay with that mechanic, but the problem is, if your build is using a unique weapon, you kind of avoided the idea of going with a league mechanic. It's just voided entirely for that specific item till you get to the end game, where you then get to encounter an experience with the league mechanic at that point for your specific unique item. Same for plus minus on the shield as well, and potentially if you're using the unique, right, they can have it on the helmet. The Al Ebens or whatever it's called. So that's one of the biggest problems, in my opinion, that it feels a lot like the league mechanic is only really attractive because of the reward structure to do when you have that item you want to use. And if you're using unique, you're avoided till the end game, which means you're essentially playing standard league and not really encountering the league mechanic, mainly because of the monsters from the league mechanic are completely unrewarding, which discourages anyone from encountering and actually engaging with the league mechanic till they get to the point where you're actually having that item you want to use something with. And that feels kind of bad, and I'm not very happy about that. Now, keep in mind, though, I actually really like this league so far, and that has to do with another fact I'll talk about in this video. But the thing is, it feels a lot like most people are basically just playing Standard League for the next coming 3 months, which means that unlike things like Sanctum League, I think that this league will be rather limited in terms of the longevity, and for the sake of playing this for the next 3 months. And that's kind of sad to see, but because I really like this league mechanic. The other approach of this Crucible mechanic is obviously the way I will be using it moving forward, and that is to pop this on bases I'd like to craft on, and trying to get that really good tree, and then I'll craft on it. Now, the problem is with crafting is that it is one of the most complex things you can do in this game outside of playing minion builds. And the thing is, I'll have a link in the descriptions below to a crafting project I'll be working on, which is teaching people how to craft not X or Y item, but to actually teach you how to craft in Path of Exile. That's something I've been pushing in a lot of effort in, and I'm continuing that project. So because of me being a big fan of crafting, that this league falls pretty well in my lap in terms of enjoyment, but I also know that the vast majority of players are not in that category. So moving over from the reward structure that I think can be solved, you know, make the Crucible monsters actually drop some interesting rewards. Anything from just more currency to having Crucible tree items dropping from them or something like that would be enough to make it more interesting, to some degree at least. The other problem we have with Crucible is that it feels a lot like the monsters are extremely overtuned. And before I go talk too much about that, I do want to point out that when you fill up this little thingy, it's not a slowly progressing bar that fills up. I've only experienced this going in chunks. Like, I hold it down, boom, 40%, and then nothing happened, boom, 80%. I'm like, what the fuck's going on? Because apparently the shit's scaling, right? But we don't know how it's scaling. There's no indicator, no information of how these monsters are becoming stronger and more scarier. All we know, and that we can see visually, is that we're getting more monsters. So I'm a little bit upset about that, the lack of information of how it actually scales them up in that sense. And this chunks makes it very hard for you to target a certain percent. Let's say, hey, I want to do 25%. You start pushing the button. It goes up to 5, it goes up to 10, boom, you're up in 60%. I'm like, yo, bro, what the fuck? This is way more than I expected. And that's just so weird to see. So I'm not sure what their plan is there. And I hope they can do some sort of changes to that approach. But then again, that goes hand in hand to the difficulty of the monsters. They seem to be rather overtuned. I've been playing on a very low budget version of the Mage Skeletons, and on the higher tier content, I have been spending a long time working on certain rares from these Crucible encounters that are, first off, doing a ton of damage. I can't even fathom how it is to be a melee character versus those, because they do so much damage. Luckily with the minions, they're kind of fine to play with, but it takes ages to bring them down because of how tanky they are on a low budget build. Obviously these are fully juiced up Crucibles. So there's that little problem as well. And with the monsters being as unrewarding as they are, I feel like it's not really encouraging for me to engage with it because of how unrewarding the monsters are to kill, only to get that opening of a tree on my weapon. So I really hope they can do some sort of changes to this, because I'm not very happy with it. I'd like to hear you guys' opinions on these things, so leave a comment in the comments below. Outside of this, I genuinely feel like there's a lot of problems, but I think it all goes back to the problem of the build or the league feeling more like a standard league than anything. I'm not sure how that can be tackled other than a few of my suggestions I brought up in general. But other than that, I feel like if they make some adjustments to these things, the league can feel a lot better, for sure. But it all comes down to those things. Another thing to point out is that in today's stream, in which we're doing this recording, we will be testing the new Crucible Spectres, because they have some really cool abilities. And the more I've looked at them, some of them are actually insane. And I fully understand why they're so goddamn scary when you're popping them, because it's absolutely nuts. But again, it also means that it's kind of scary to even try to tank these guys. And I feel like there should always be a reward. You should be rewarded for your work and time invested, but also be better rewarded for your risks that you're taking. And I don't know how it is in the hardcore leagues, because some of these are fucking cracked, like for real. And I don't feel like I'm being better rewarded for encountering super juiced up enemies from Crucible. They're just a nuisance, takes ages to kill because of how tanky they are, and they're absolutely giga scary. But it's not like I'm having a better reward for killing it, because essentially I only open up my tree. I can do that on a lower tier maps instead, because to my understanding, the trees are not gated on the map I'm doing them in. They're gated behind the item level of the weapon. Maybe I'm wrong on that, I'm not sure. But do keep in mind, I haven't reached the endgame stage where I'm trying out the maps and whatnot, and that's because I'm keeping myself on a very low budget right now with the build to try that out and showcase that for the community. But I don't know. I just feel like it's just a nuisance, and there's a lot of minor issues in approaching the Crucible League mechanic as well, and it just feels awkward in general. But again, I think the biggest problem for the non-crafters out there, that this might just feel like a standard league. However, I do want to say that I really like this mechanic. It's a really interesting, cool way to play the game, because you will eventually get that really cool Crucible tree on a weapon that you want to use, or a shield that you want to use. And that's going to feel like you're getting rewarded with the power of that. It's just that I feel like it's so far in and so much RNG, and all the struggles and pain and risks you're taking to get there makes the league feel more like a standard league. I love this mechanic. I just don't feel like in its current state that it's enough, if that makes sense. That's all I wanted to talk about. If you have any comments or feedback or your opinions in the league mechanic, let me know in the comments below. I'm going to read through it all because I think this is a really cool league mechanic. It might actually turn into be one of my favorite ones because I'm a crafter, but I also feel like for the vast majority of the player base, that's not the case. So do let me know. Make sure you hit the like button on your way out and subscribe for more content. I'll see you guys in the next one. Till then, stay safe. Keep rocking.